You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Show. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. This edition will discuss regional cooperation among states and economic development in Nigeria. And joining me virtually for this conversation is Dr Afolabi Olowookere, an economist and CEO of Analysts, Data Services and Resources. It's nice to have you on the show, Dr Afolabi.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let us begin with the reality that economists have called for a regional approach to Nigeria's economic advancement. What do you think about this, and especially the Southwest cooperation that has been on to the Dawn Commission?
Yeah, once again, thank you. Yes, so a lot of people called for regional arrangements to addressing some of the country's challenges. Maybe one way to look at it is to say that there is no single way to the market. There are different approaches to solve a particular problem. So our country definitely has some issues or challenges to be addressed, and there are many recommendations from different quarters. One of them is to say, for us to be competitive as a country, we may not just be taking a national approach to solving the issues. We can also be looking at regional approaches. Actually, it would have been better to say state approaches, but because some of our states are small, they may not be that competitive. Maybe if we then take a regional approach to solving some of the challenges, we probably may have a better headway in solving them. So we need development, and regional approach is one of the ways to go. Another thing we can also look at is that may also align with some of the calls that we normally have, that why can't we have a regional government? And I think people still have this idea of 60s or before the 70s that when we had regional government, it kind of probably performed better than the current state that we have, which has organized the country into 36 states plus FCT. Whether that is something that is going to be useful in recent times is an empirical question. But the call for regionalism is also to be in line with the recent call for regional government, so that people can become stronger as economic bloc, as against small states. Not all states in Nigeria can actually do the kind of things that states in the US, for instance, can do, especially when you consider a federal government that is relatively stronger.
No, you're right, Dr. Afolabi. During the regional era, we saw significant developments. For example, you're from the Southwest. You saw that under the Chief Obafemi Awolowo era, the Western region had massive infrastructure, human capital development, and we saw also in the Eastern region the likes of Michael Okpara and of course Alvin Ikoku and the rest did a lot in terms of regional development. So it is a debate, but if anything that happened like that has to go through constitutional mode. But regional blocks is very, very important. Now, when we look at the challenge across regional basis, one of the concerns is the fact that development is being hurt by project duplication and misalignment across the regions. ProShare has called for a regional integration framework that looks at input and output matrices that help guide private sector investments, which is very important, especially in the area of infrastructure. What is your view about this, and how can it be implemented when you look at, for example, what's happening to the Dawn Commission? And even the South Side, we're going to see once again braced, that's Bayelsa Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Cross River, Edo Delta, recently had a meeting. So how can we begin to align projects in a way that it can attract private sector investments, especially in infrastructure, as your team has been talking about?
So the first thing is that issue of duplication, I won't say duplication necessarily, because each state constitutionally, each state is responsible and answerable to its or our own people, not those of its region. For instance, the Lagos State governor will not be answerable to the people of Oyo states, directly, or people of Ondo states or Ogun states. Of course, whatever it does may affect them, but it's answerable to the electorates who are within the geographical space of Lagos State. But that notwithstanding, regional arrangements can strengthen or can leverage economies of scales. So in economies of scales, not everything can be done in a very big manner. If you look at power plants, for instance, there are
Yes.
big power plants, there are small power plants, there are water projects, there are big water projects, there are small water projects. I mean, if you do the economic analysis and you find out that the average cost of providing a particular service becomes lower and lower and lower as you increase the production of people that you are servicing, then the best is to do integration. So if regional arrangements are done properly, if they are based on empirical analysis, not just because we are Yorubas or we are Deltans or Rivers, or because we against them, if it's done as a result of, in this particular region, if you provide this facility, it's going to take you a big initial cost, which if all of us can put money together, we can execute that project because it's going to be the same cost to all of us anyway, each one of us, but we can aggregate it together and bring the cost together and execute that particular project. So regional approach can leverage economy of scale, and that will not be for all projects, but for selected projects. That is one. The other part is what Proshare is talking about, input-output analysis. There are many ways to look at input-output analysis. People have looked at it in computers and trying to, but the popular one is in a macroeconomic analysis. And what you are looking at is the interdependence between different economic sectors or industries. And that will require us to have what is called input-output tables. And we are trying to look at economic shocks, impact of economic shocks, direct and indirect and total, the way they affect the economy, and how they can actually be used for policy making and analysis. So if we look at input-output analysis, it's not something impossible for a region, but the first thing is to say, to what extent are we even employing it or have the necessary data for it at the national level? We have not even maximized the usability and the potential of input-output analysis at the national level because of depth of data on certain cases. And if you have data challenges at the national level, imagine what you are going to have at state level. Imagine what you are going to have at the regional level. If you are going to do a serious input-output analysis, that means you probably have data on the state's gross domestic products. As you know, the last one that was done by MBS was in 2017 for 22 states, not for all states. Lagos later did its own. And some states have done theirs, but they are done in an haphazard manner. And you may not be able to, in a single space, get the GDP of all the states in the country, except for some of us, for instance, at Analysts Services, we try to estimate some of this GDP, but they are still mere estimates. So to do input-output analysis, you need to get some of this data ready at the state level and also at the national level in a way that no state within a region would think that another state is using it to its own benefits. So those are some of the issues. So it's a good thing to think about, but for us to also know that data challenges will always be there, but we can address them at the national level. Then we come down to the state level. Then states in a particular region can start coming together. So for regional regional integration institutions like Dawn Commission, like the one that we have in Southeast or South-South, as well as Northeast, North Central, and Northwest, it's important to leverage the existing structure at the level of the states and see what states are benefiting from other states and see the interlinkages in terms of who supplies what within the region, who buys what from what states, and what advantages and benefits and how are they allocated among the states in that region. But they have a lot of work to do. But the first thing is that because states are constitutionally recognized, they have to leverage the existing state structure to be able to have something that can be very useful at the regional level.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Afolabi, let me just follow up on this because there are several projects. And when you talk about projects, it's really something that, of course, I really look at states especially. I've had the conversation with South-South several years ago, the Braced Commission, where they talked about working together for gas to power, because there's so much gas deposits in the South-South. I've had conversation with the North sector. I mean, there was this conversation about North Central states and the whole 19 northern states coming together to invest in solar energy in a massive form for investments. And of course, the Dawn Commission, I've attended one of those conversations of having a regional railway project, regional investment in power. So when you look at this, isn't that the way to go, Doctor? Like, let's take this big ticket infrastructure investment, structure it in a way that we can attract the investments required, because the government is limited in funding this period to even address various infrastructure deficits across the country. I mean, the federal government and states also trying to raise funds.
I agree. So raising funds at the regional level, you also, let's look at what states do. For instance, they raise bonds and they use their FAC allocation as ISP.
Yes.
And even some of them go private way. They get private entities to do an SPV that raise bond, or that on lending towards the states, but they still use the states ISPO and things like that. So at the regional level, they are still going to be relying on the resources of the states, since the region themselves are not going to be getting any money from allocations and the rest, and the region cannot tax people in other people's states. I know all those regional arrangements, you see them that they also even still be funded by the states. So Dawn Commission, the one you have in South, the one you have anywhere, they'll be funded by the states that are in that arrangement. So that's one way to look at it. But it's also very important because within each region, there will always be one state that is relatively maybe stronger or strong than others. So if that state is also committed to the development of its region, that's the first thing, and also have a long-term perspective about the region, because it's going to bear a lot of cost, and not necessarily will you see the benefits in the immediate term, because the benefits will accrue to the smaller ones, but in the long term, the larger states will benefit more. So it's for this argument to be propounded and for such states to start seeing the reason for creating a leadership. For instance, is a Southwest economic arrangement without Lagos will be very small. North Central without Abuja will be very small. Northwest without Kano will be very small, so, and then maybe South without the rivers. So those states that are the arrowhead in those regions will then see, wait a minute, we can become stronger as a region against a very strong federal. And my interest is to make sure that we develop together with this region and then be able to talk better when we get to the federal level. That is a very, very interesting thing to look at. And you mentioned power, you mentioned rail, and you mentioned power, rail, and some other, and even solar. Okay, power, solar, as well as gas to power, energy, which is also very useful. Yes. So what I said about that is because if any project require huge initial funding, that will probably be equal across states, but it's a sunk cost. All of them can come together because of their proximity and do that so that they can have the benefits, or the cost can then be spread out, then become smaller. So it's a great idea if states can look at this. I was just looking at something in the National Development Plan 2021 to 2025. It has a section it calls regional development. And that regional development has several objectives. One of them is to ensure the simultaneous development of communities across all regions, to make sure that across the value chain, right, subnational are arranged or organized in their region, so that if all of them are producing agricultural commodities, there's a particular factory, agro-ally, that is processing it. It's not only sourcing from Oyo, it's sourcing from Ogun, Ondo, Osun, Ekiti. So it's able to get enough resources. Everybody is bringing it there. It may be cited in, let's say, Ogun, for instance, or Oyo, or Lagos, but everybody understands that it's our whole, and then we're committed to the improvement of that particular one. So the point is this, one of the ways Nigeria can grow, and if you look at the NASG, the last summit, when they were looking
Nigerian
at the
Economic
three
Survey Group.
pathways, three
Yes.
pathways to transforming Nigeria. One of the pathways was regional development. They were looking at ICT, they were looking at industrialization, traditional industrialization, and they were also looking at regionalism to say that we can organize our economic activities across the regions in a way that development will be spread within the region such that the regions can become stronger and thereby component states or constituent states can become stronger. So this is a good idea if you can do it. But as I said, whatever we learn from ECOWAS and some other regional blocks at the continental level or regional West Africa level, we can also learn those lessons at our own level, because there's always the question of who is bigger now, who is going to take the most of the benefit, who is going to pay the initial cost, and how will the benefit be spread over time.
Yes. Thank you very much, Doctor. So at the heart of efficiency is effective resource allocation and household productivity. How would this work within a regional model, and how do you see the concept of governance as a service, which is very important? This is what happened during the era of the Awolowos. There was governance as a service, which you saw education. Southwest was really on top in education and agriculture. Cocoa used to build various institutions that we see today. The same happened in the northern region. Samadu Bello and what he did with development in the north. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, the east, Kano, Ibiam. So what do you say to this?
Okay, so in economics is a study of resource allocation, especially when those resources are limited in supply. So, but efficient allocation of resources has always been a very complicated exercise. Because the first is that what is efficiency? Economists may have their own idea about efficiency, but the political arrangements, socio-cultural, religious, and psychological, whatever of people may have, or geographical, may also have their own idea about what is efficiency. And this also is dependent on the philosophy, economic philosophy that you see in a country. For instance, if you have a capitalist-oriented economy, which is a market system, you believe that market is always the best way to allocate resources in an efficient manner, because prices there's full information, prices correct things, they discipline people, and then the best way to allocate resources will be the market. But even at that market, there's the concept of market failure, because markets will not always allocate resources efficiently because of several factors like externality, that is effects of what you do on the bystanders, as well as things around public goods, which will not be provided by the market. Therefore, government must be able to come to the rescue of market in certain situations. So for a developing economy like ours, the challenge has always been the optimum blend of markets and states. So how best can you allocate resources, making sure it's market determined, at the same time, making sure that the government is trying to solve the problem that are caused by the market. But, sometimes government itself may go and cause the wala and then blame it on the market, or the market caused the problem and blame it on the government. And I think it's an iterative process. We are still trying to solve that problem as a country. That's why most times people criticize government criticize private sector. Government comes back and say private sector is the engine of growth. Private sector comes back, government should provide leadership. Sometimes private sector tells government, leave it for us. Sometimes private sector cause the problem and call government come and rescue us. It's something that we need to really look at. But in terms of regional arrangement or development, we need to at least be able to define our economic philosophy, knowing fully well that it's not a corner solution. It's not to say it has to be purely market or purely government. It has to be an efficient blend of the two. And also that a weak government is also a weak private sector, and a strong private sector is also a strong government. So without a strong government, it will be difficult to have a strong private sector. So we need a government structure that is strong and efficient to be able to regulate and give direction to the private sector. That is where we can then have government as a service. Government as a service will be enabled by technology, free flow of information, and government recognizing that it is the agents of the people, not the principal of the people. You know, in the principal agents relationship, where the people, citizens are the principals, and governments or those in government are the agents who are supposed to do things to the welfare or towards the welfare of their principal. But what we have in the country is inverted, such that the citizens are now the one to serve the government, and then government then becomes the principal rather than the agent. So we need to have a system where private sector is given its rightful place within the remit of the law, and government sector create the enabling environment, and also make sure that whatever the private cannot produce efficiently, maybe because of some other externality or public sector elements of them, government is producing them until the private sector is mature enough in that particular sector to start producing them. So if that works for us at the regional level, so be it. But for us as a regional, we need to recognize that the state themselves must take this thing into their hands, the future into their hands, do well, recognize that in coming together, in collaborating across the region, they can do better. They can learn from one another and then work more effectively with the federal government to develop their zones or regions, which now goes down to the citizens. Because if it's not for citizens, citizens will say, what kind of regional agreements you are having when the federal government is there? Please, federal government come to our rescue. Lagos State is dominating us, or River State is dominating us, or Kano is dominating us in our region. So those are some of the things that we need to solve as a country in order to benefit from regionalism as well as government as a service as a concept.
Thank you very much, Dr. Afolabi Olowookere, CEO of Analysts, Data Services and Resources, for these very, very wonderful conversations on regional cooperation among states and economic development in Nigeria. I must commend you and your team, ADSR, for bringing some very impactful research and insights into the activity of states, which is now the area where we must much focus and see what they're doing, because they are also closer to the grassroots. Thank you once again for the time, Dr. Afolabi Olowookere.
Thank you for having me, and thanks to our viewers.
Thank you very much. Thank you. To our viewers, if you want to get further insights on this conversation, visit the ProShare website displayed on the screen and follow our social media platforms to engage further on this show. Till we come your way again, enrich yourself with the knowledge of socioeconomic developments around you, because it is a wise thing to do. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.